pull your hand and look at it, right? Your palm. I actually make people do this. And I say to them, realize that God made you and then broke the mold. Because never before in the history of the world and never again in the history of humanity, there will be a handprint or a DNA exactly like yours. Ever. That's how much he loves you and how much he thinks of you and how much he crafted you for a purpose for such a time as this. So who are you to try to emulate somebody else or want to be like somebody else?
Éducation Se Richès, l'émission qui valorise notre culture et notre savoir. Vous aimez nos contenus? Alors, abonnez-vous à notre chaîne YouTube pour ne rien manquer. Abonnez-vous pour rester informé de toutes nos émissions inspirantes. Likez pour soutenir notre mission éducative. Partagez pour diffuser les vraies valeurs de notre pays. Ensemble, faisons briller l'éducation et la culture haïtienne.
Some people follow trends, some people follow opportunities, and then there are those who follow vision. In this episode, we dive into a thoughtful, insightful, and inspiring conversation with Guylaine Saint Juste. She's a woman who didn't just build a career, but she built impact, a voice that brings clarity to leadership, strategy, and professional growth, a mind that understands that success is never accidental. This is more than an interview. It's an exploration of the thinking, experiences, and decisions that shape the journey of someone driven by vision. Welcome to Edikasyon Se Richès. For this episode, I have with me Guylaine Saint that I want to introduce to you. Guylaine, welcome. How are you doing?
Yeah, thank you, Steve, for the invitation. I think we're going to have a great talk today because we have a special guest. And it's going to be
exactly
once again about education. It's about building self-development, but also financial development.
Exactly. Like I said before, we have Guylaine Saint Juste with us. She's a respected professional known for a strategic mindset, leadership and insight, and a commitment to excellence. She has a career defined by impact, vision, and continuous growth. She brings a thoughtful perspective on professional development, decision-making, and purposeful leadership. Her experience and voice offer valuable lessons for anyone seeking not just success, but meaningful influence. It's a pleasure to welcome to Edikasyon Se Richès, Guylaine Saint Juste. Welcome. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. When you were talking about who you're having today, I'm like, oh my God, they're talking about me. I need to remember to put the check in the mail. For a hype squad.
Yes, we are so happy to have you with us. And like I said, we're gonna talk about your career experience and share some advice to the youth. To start, could you briefly introduce yourself and share what has shaped the leader that you are today?
So I think you already said my name. You know, it's always a pleasure to be amongst my people because only my people say my name well. You can imagine with the name of Guylaine Saint Juste. So thank you for the honor of sharing this time with you and for giving meaning, right? Meaning and significance to the work that I seek to do. The leader that I am today was shaped by my grandmother. I always say that if I could be a third of the woman, I continue to talk to her in the present, even though she's been gone for 42 years. And she, I still talk about her in the present. And I often marvel about the impact that we can have on people, even in short bursts of time. And so my grandmother had an incredible story, but I remember the day she died. And that shaped me as a leader. She was buried, her funeral mass, I remember 42 years later, was a Sacré-Cœur, and then her viewing was à l'Ange Bleu. And I can tell you, Steve and Guylaine, there was not anybody not crying. I remember everybody being dressed in black, and I remember the pungent smell of the flowers because there were so many of them that there was no place to put them. And what struck me and continues to inspire me is that from the Machan Pistache to the Machan Frisco, to professors, to ministers, to business owners, and everything in between, everybody talked about the way she made them feel. That when she was with them, for the moment she was with them, they were the most important person in the world. And at that moment, I learned that as a leader, our job is to serve. Leadership has nothing to do with commanding. Leadership has nothing to do with directing. That's the job. There's plenty of management science techniques that can be applied for that. For me, the leader that I most follow is the one who washed his disciples' feet in an example of pure service and humility. And ultimately, by serving, we allow people to achieve a highest version of their best self that allow them to accomplish goals, impact outcomes that they themselves did not believe that they could. And so every day I enter the morning asking myself, am I a better leader than I was yesterday? And praying and hoping that tomorrow I'll be a better leader than I am today.
Wow, super. Thank you for this great testimony, and we salute the memory of your grandmother.
Thank you.
She contributed in making you this great leader that you are today.
She's extraordinary. I think heaven
Exactly.
is a better place because she's in it. I would tell you, every day we learn, every day we grow. That is my hope for everyone listening to this, is that every day we learn, every day we grow. And, I would tell you my new level of growth is I saw the interview that Wes Moore did with Nora O'Donnell recently. And the thing he said that struck with me, he said belonging and all these things. He said, no, I actually think that the room is complete when I am in it. And I was like, okay, hallelujah, this is a new experience. The room, can you imagine the quiet, humble confidence of somebody able to say, I actually believe that the room is complete when I'm in it. And so I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet. It's sort of set a table for me of how much more I have to grow. So
That's great. At what moment did you realize that you needed to use your voice as a tool for change? Was that inspiration from your grandmother as well, or what moment has shaped this trajectory for you?
I've been incredibly blessed throughout my life to have people come along and teach me. My father was a social entrepreneur before there was such a name for one. And he paid the price for it. He's no longer in the country. We'll leave that there. And so I also will say that for all the things we say about the Catholic Church, I went to Collège Marianne, so from, first grade until I left, après le baccalauréat. And I think we need to really give credit and credence to what the Catholic teaching does around this idea that I'm not alone, and that service and giving and recognizing that I am a part of something bigger than myself in shaping the way we see the world. And so growing up in Haiti, I never understood the colorism that plagues, our society and our culture. At an early age, before I had vocabulary for it, before I could express my words into it, I did not agree nor understand. I never agreed nor understood nor supported the ways in which our society is so built in classism, elitism, that are reminiscence of the colonial age. But the problem is we're doing it to each other. And again, I can, as an adult now and as an executive, I have words and vocabulary to express this, but even as a little girl, I never did. And so I've always seen it as just not my responsibility, but my duty, advocate for those who don't have voice, and to stand for a sense of justice. And so now in the seat that I sit, I tell people of all the ism, the one that is the most damaging for me that I want to tackle in my work is elitism. It makes my kako and Taino blood boil a little bit. So we're going to go after it.
Definitely.
Beginning as a leader, from being a granddaughter and growing to the person you become now. But take us to the journey of, let's say, your career. How was it for you to become this person from the little girl from College Marianne and from Haiti, and with this family as a social structure, social support that is very important for you, as I can see, and also the, let's say, the gift of having the Catholic education with the values that it carries. Go with us with in this journey to yourself. How did you become this leader with this sense of service as a driver for your career in general?
That's a beautiful question, Kalari. Thank you for asking it. Let me just give you one little more piece of the fabric of my family and my community, because then as I walk you through it, it'll help explain, a little bit more about me. My parents were divorced when I was 6 years old. And my mother's family was definitely matriarchal. They all live in the same house, from my great-grandmother to my grandmother to the aunts and everything. And my mother, when my parents divorced, and you can imagine, in 1975, 76, the expectation was that my mother was going to go back into, the family house. And she said no, right? Haiti is a Catholic state. You don't divorce. You all know what I'm talking about. And here she is with a little girl, 6 years old. And she's deciding to go and find her own place and to raise me by herself. And in so many ways, I owe everything that I am, so much of what I am, to my mother, right? So much. Because when she was raising me by herself as her only child, there were times I thought she was too tough, she wasn't touchy-feely and all the things. But as an adult and through my life, I ended up raising 2 girls by myself also. I talk about, at the beginning, before we brought everybody, we talked about the importance of oral culture, right? And it's so important to find words to name things. In those days, I didn't have words to name it. But I realized that so much of my, I think sometimes people confuse confidence with arrogance. But this ability for me to believe that I can and to never say I can't is so much born out of having been raised by strong women, strong Black women who never took no for an answer and never looked at the obstacles, but rather always looked at obstacles as opportunity, right? I mean, that I just wanted to bring that, because I think as I go through the story, that should come out. And so you can imagine my mother's sacrifice when after Jean-Claude left in 87 and the country sort of like dropped into turmoil, that she made the decision to let me leave Haiti and move to the US to go live with my father, who then had remarried and had 2 children. So you talk about culture shock.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the first in my family to graduate from an American college. I emphasize this because my family was big in education, but the reason I emphasize that and give words to it is because my father did not know how American, the college system, the system of higher education, there's a whole way it works, and he didn't know. And so he figured since I was there, I should probably get educated And because he didn't know, I hadn't gone through, the SATs and all the things that now I know that I was able to guide my daughters. So I went to a community college. And I spent 2 years in a community college. And I had to work. And so I started my career as a bank teller. Never in my wildest dream would I think I would be where I am today. I know what it is to have nothing, but then to always feel I had everything. And so my career grew in banking. I one of the things, again, you'll get the drift that I like words and like the essence of what they convey. I don't like the word 4-year degree. We call it an associate, a master's, a doctorate. Why is it that at this bachelor's degree, we've resorted to a 4-year degree as opposed to a bachelor's degree, right? So I don't have a 4-year degree because my bachelor's degree cost me 7 years of my life because I was working and going to school. And, in the meanwhile, if you can appreciate this from 1998. So in 1987, I came here. In 1989, I married. In 1991, I had my first child. In 1996, I had my second child. In 1998, I separated from my husband. 99, I divorced him. And in January of 2001, I lost my mother. That's a lot of growth for somebody in their 20s.
Yeah.
And then I found myself at the age of 32 raising 2 daughters by myself. And so you would have thought my career would have derailed. There's a guide. And when you say yes, it'll say yes with you. If there's something I want everybody to hear, is life is never against you, it is for you. Sometimes I always say the clay pot gets broken into pieces so that the light can shine greater. And that's why it is an honor and a privilege for me to sit in the seat that I sit and to do the work that I do. So I spent 28 years in banking, in gradually increasing roles. And my last role in banking, I was a senior vice president at Capital One. And I, in the meanwhile, also managed to get a graduate degree from UVA. But you know what? My heart is still at NOVA, Northern Virginia Community College. And I actually, some days I just think, oh my God, what a journey and what a ride I've been on. I've been the commencement speaker, at NOVA. And then this past May, I had the privilege of being the commencement speaker at George Mason University, my alma mater. And then here I am now serving on the Dean's Council, at George Mason University. I mean, don't tell me this has been a wild ride, right? And so I love those schools. I talk a lot about George Mason University as being a school that accepts 90% of people. So it is, again, this idea of eliticism, but is proving outcomes that, alums of George Mason University on average earn $8,000 more than all the schools that are around in the DC area. And they're proving, and so I say we now, given the role that I play, that we're proving that access does not dilute outcome. And that the more we give people opportunities to rise, the more they amaze us with the human capacity to produce, contribute, and have impact. And so when I left banking, I always knew I wanted to be a CEO. And people used to laugh at me. But, I'm also very much of a pragmatic person. And so I thought, I have a name nobody can say. I don't have an MBA. I don't have a network of alum network of some of those big name schools. I'm 5'11", Black woman in America with an accent and a lot of opinions that people don't usually rally behind. So I thought in this world of banking, it's probably not going to happen. So the next leg of the journey that opened before me was to go into youth workforce development. And I learned so much during the time at Europe, 6 years. And during COVID, I ended up saying yes to the work that we do at NABA, and what a ride it has been in 6 years. In 5 years, I just celebrated my 5th year as CEO of this company. We have grown our membership by 6x time. We have grown revenues by 4x time. redefine our purpose and our theory of change and are doing work that I think is actually changing lives. And so for me, I think at every stage of my career, there is a lesson I needed to learn in order to teach it forward. Nothing happens by accident. Everything is by design. But you must. It's a mindset. You know, one of my favorite songs is Bob Marley when he says, "None but ourselves can free our mind." I believe that very much. It's a mindset. And the absolute, resolute decision to learn and to keep moving yourself forward and never doubt your dreams, ever. So here we are. I hope I answered your question.
How was it for you? Can you remember an experience where this threat, this elitism being like a barrier that you end up overcome, and is there something you can remember about this experience, and how did you manage to succeed despite this context, this systemic context of elitism?
I could tell you stories, and to this day, it shows up. Right? Remember what I told you? I'm a community college kid who is proud to be a community college kid. So I advocate for community colleges. When I started at NABA, we did not engage with community colleges. Now won 15 community colleges. We've designed programs to help community. I mean, like all the things, right? I didn't go to a big name school. I went to a state school. When I went to Mason, like nobody knew about Mason. Remember, it's the men's basketball team who, 50, whatever number of years ago, who put us on the map. Nobody knew George Mason. We have a 90% acceptance rate. So we can say, I'm that smart that I got into George Mason. I'm none of those, right? I mean, I often go into Harvard Club or Yale Club or Wharton Club or, University of Pennsylvania clubs. I go to those lunches but Mason doesn't have a Mason club. You know what I mean? So it's every day in my life that I'm faced with this. I'll tell you a particular story. I hope you'll laugh with me. I will not tell you the name of the institution because it is not flattering to them, and I really am keen on preserving reputation. So I was working at an organization, and I was the only one who looked like me in the role. And I had a white man said to me, "I don't even know how you got in the room because you don't have an MBA. And in that role, you must have an MBA to be in this role." Said that to me. And I smiled. Because part of what I say is what people say to me is a function of their character. How I respond is a function of my character. So I smiled. But here's the other side of the story. So he had his team in some part of the country. I was running a commercial team in my part of the country. And then at the end of the year, my team was the number one team in the country. We had outperformed every single expectation that you could. And so we happened to be in a meeting. And I walked up to him and I said, "I don't have an MBA, but brother man, I guarantee you I got paid more than you did this year." Guaranteed.
Yeah.
Guaranteed, right? And so I remember, but here's the credit I give this person. He looked at me and at first I think he was stunned that I remembered. Because when sometimes people confuse your meekness for weakness.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I always tell people, don't confuse my meekness for weakness, right? So the fact that I responded, I think whatever he was trying to do, he thought it had worked. And so when I said that to him, he turned bright red and I walked away. And then he followed me and he said, "Let me tell you, you are formidable. And you've just taught me the biggest lesson of my life." And for the whole time that I worked there, we actually became really good buddies. For me, that's how you turn it around.
That's it. Perfect. Yeah. Do you believe that women's leadership is still underestimated or misunderstood?
Are you reading the same headlines? Yes, there would be that in the kitchen. Although I'm a good cook, I'm really a good cook, and I love all these things. I'm quite how do you say this? I'm quite of a homebody and a homemaker, but yeah, that's where they want us back, right? And so, but we must not let them. Now, I talk about women leadership a lot because I think sometimes we feel like we've got to behave in ways that are contrarian to our values and our principle and who we are to be in the room or to engage in the room or to succeed in the room. And I don't believe so. I actually think there's enough research now to show that women, a lot of times outperform, people, other men not always, right? Because it's not a woman and man thing, but that our ability to be nurturers, we actually are really darn good at building teams. The fact that, we sometimes are highly intuitive, as Blaise Pascal says, le cœur a ses raisons que la raison ne connaît pas. And sometimes, we're so in the logic and so dependent on hardcore data that we don't listen to our heart and, dare I say, even less to our soul. And I would tell you, the best decisions that I've made in my business, in my career, in my life were not necessarily rational decisions, but every time I've taken bets, I've taken risks to follow my heart and to follow my soul, I have never regretted it, ever.
I was about to ask you what core strength, what distinct strength do you think women bring to impact-driven leadership? But I think you just answered that question.
Well, not every woman, right? Not every woman thinks the same way. And so if I'm encouraging people, I will tell you something, Steve. I tell people all the time, in your career, there's a thing we say, we confuse authenticity with full self. I've heard it 1,000 times, and as many CEOs of companies or C-level companies or Fortune 500 that I spend time with, I tell them, please don't tell people to bring their full self to work. I don't bring my full self to work. And in my company, I don't encourage people to bring their full self to work because it is a social contract. And there is a certain expectations that we have of how people should behave at work. But I think we confuse that with the idea of authenticity. And what I would encourage anybody listening to this for whatever they can get out of it is I tell people, do the work. And the doing the work for me means I love this passage in Proverbs, know thyself. It's a really powerful word. Know thyself. Because when you know yourself, you actually become very acquainted with who you are and the values that are primordial for you and your core strengths. And in making peace with the good and the bad. At the beginning, I was able to say to you, I have the gift of gab because I always like a good story, but that's true of me. But what it means is I have to manage airspace when I'm in rooms so that I don't dominate the space. I don't seek to dominate the space, but because I love a good story and I love a good so on, sometimes people could see me as dominating the space. But that knowing of myself allows me to govern myself accordingly based on the space that I am. So for me, I don't know if it is a woman thing or a man thing, but to everybody out there that is taking the time to listen, thank you. And I would say, take the time to know yourself, understand the values that are primordial to you, and always, no matter what, live your life in accordance with them.
Vous écoutez Edikasyon Se Richès, le podcast à ne pas rater.
Very, very often women are penalized in leadership circles for different reasons. Sometimes they say that women prioritize their family. different reason that they always bring up to penalize women. Your experience, how have you navigated these kind of difficulties, and what advice would you have for women aspiring to climb the leadership roles?
I think for me, it goes back to a sense, you'll get it. I am a very principle-driven person, right? Principles are important to me. And so in that set of principle, I have a set of priorities that I choose to live my life by. One is my relationship with God. Two is my relationship with my family, my husband and my kids. Three is my relationship with, what I call my sisters, because I grew up as an only child and I have less than a handful of women that are like, they may not be my sisters by blood, but you know what, let me tell you something. They call right this minute. I'm going to say, Steve, I'm sorry. Guyla's calling, or Joanne is calling, or those are my people, right? I mean, I'm picking, and CN is calling. I'm picking up the phone, right? And so Aisha is calling, like, you know what I'm saying? I'm picking up the phone. And so I say this to say, so that's important to me. And then, what wrapped around all of it is this purpose, this mission that I seek to serve in that order. And so there were times in my career that I slowed my career down because I knew as a single mom, young woman raising two daughters, I didn't want to go to the happy hour because they were very unhappy hours for me because I remember I was a single mom with two daughters who played basketball, competitive with all the other things that they needed to do. I just didn't want to go. And I didn't have the time to go. And you know what? And there was an exchange that happened, and I'm okay with it, right? I realized I don't like happy hours at all. So I prefer to attend teas, and I host teas and lunch because now I can. I set my own table, right? But I think the idea that folks can have that this is so I believe we can have it all. But I love the way Tashonda Brown Duckett, the CEO of TIAA, says it, right? She said, you can have it all, but it's like a portfolio of investment. You just have to constantly be balancing based on the goals that you're trying to achieve. Because what you can have it all, but you cannot have it all at the same time in the same percentage that you're putting in. So yeah. There are times, you know what, I'm gone and I travel and my family may be lucky if they see me a day and a half. But there are days where I choose to do a maddening one-day trip to Austin, Texas, going in the morning and coming back in the evening so I can be home because it's important to me, right? Those are all choices that we get to make. But understanding always, is the career the ultimate goal? Right? I ask people, is the title the ultimate goal? Is the money the ultimate goal? Or is the ultimate goal a life well lived? Is the ultimate goal a life of significance? Is the ultimate goal, for me, it is, that I hope and dream a funeral like that of my grandmother, where people across all walks of life would say she made me feel like I was the center of the world for the time that I was with her. It all depends on where you set your sight. And I encourage people to say, the title is fleeting. The money is your servant, not your master. The position is to serve others. And you got to put it all into consideration and be very intentional about the choices that you make. That in the grand scheme of things, when you look at your portfolio, you have an ROI that you're willing to live with.
You have an internal approach to your work and also how you consider life in general, your way of living. My question would be about the social impact in that matter. For me, for you, it's more focused on the service, I know. And how do you manage to build this portfolio and to know the next move? Let's say that you in your career you have a big decision to make. How did you know, like, among all this context where everything is external, to go back, to go within, and to find this answer or this intuition that you mentioned? How is it for you? And if did you have any experience where it was not that clear, it was not that simple, I would say, where you have to make a big decision and you feel like it was like kind of a dilemma between those financials and those metrics, and what you want, you have as a purpose, your intention to live a life like your grandmother did?
So, Kalani, I would tell you, remember a part about me being a personal principle? There is a spiritual principle that says that spirit needs matter to be manifest. Spirit needs matter to be manifest. And so you're talking to a woman who is absolutely convinced that everything that is alive. Everything that is alive. What I fundamentally believe is that we live such noisy lives that we don't take the time to listen. To my mentees, to people that I get to work with every day, they know I will tell them, I'm very weary and leery of people who cannot sit by themselves for at least 30 minutes without distraction, without a phone, without, like a device, without anything. Because that means you haven't gotten yourself connected deeply with yourself. You don't know yourself. In fact, in the Bible, we say God is the small whisper. I am a woman who heard the word of God from the beginning of my life all the way to today. I make everything that I do an offering to him. Let my life be a prayer. I listen. And sometimes when I don't hear, I don't move. I can tell you right now. Sometimes we just gotta wait. And I think in this hyper speed world of I can get information right now, of being able to go on a tablet. And, when we were going to school, right, we went to libraries, we took books, we researched. There's a beauty in like the evolution of things that I think sometimes we lose. And with AI, this artificial intelligence that, it's faster, quicker. Life doesn't evolve that way.
Microwave
It is
generation.
unnatural. It's not. Life does not evolve that way. And so I think sometimes the new level of my walk with God is to come to understand that in our storytelling, in our tradition, we've tried to make God human. We try to bring him down, or it, whatever you believe, to our level of understanding. And to equate this magnificence present, this magnificent being, to meet us where we are, as opposed to lifting our chin way up and imagine this magnificence that still meets us in our brokenness. And that, you know what? He doesn't get to answer me when I want to. I get to wait for him to answer me. And he tells me when to move. He tells me where to go. Honestly, with all due respect, my team searches for everywhere I show up. They didn't know you all, but I knew I needed to do this with you all. I did. Because I knew I needed to, right? And so it is a different way to live. It is a life of obedience and a life of
How
surrender.
would you consider something very impactful?
They're different and complementary. Remember, the other thing is always be improving. My team would tell you I'm one of the hardest executive to work with because you know what? You present me this today. I'm like, oh, well, this is great. You present it to me tomorrow. I'm like, what are you doing? This is not good enough. Every day you got to give me something better than what yesterday was. I push the limit. I force people to it's, the other day our CEO got really frustrated to me. She said, you said you don't want perfection, but your expectation of excellence are pretty damn close to perfection. Excuse the language, right? And so it's true, right? I never am satisfied because I always believe we could do more. We could do better. We could keep on pushing the limit of what we know is possible. Right? But every time, so I never sort of take stock of have I made it? That I'm too busy imagining the next thing to think. But I'll tell you this work is hard. The work I choose to do is not only hard work, it's also hard work. I mean, a word for it. It's not hard work, it's hard work.
Hard work.
Yes, it's hard work. The way I choose to lead is soul work. But every time, the way I describe it, my chin hits my chest, right? Last year, I had a lot of those moments. My chin hit my chest, right? In the most unbelievable way, Valangi, somebody will say something. Somebody will send me a note. I'm just telling you. So one of the programs that we have launched that's having a lot of traction is the PTC, which is the Pathway to College, where we've partnered with community colleges and HBCUs, and we support students in those community colleges to get the skills, all the things that they need so that they can transfer to an HBCU or an institute, to finish their bachelor's degree. So if you think about the transfer rate from students in community colleges to, continue their bachelor's degree in this country, it's about 2%. That program is hitting a 40% transfer rate. So it's not small. It's pretty considerable.
Definitely.
Now, the spirit of humility, I say, my sample pool is this big compared to the whole country, but still, I'm going to keep on saying we've got a 40% transfer rate versus a national average of 2%, right? And so I have been thinking a lot about how do we scale this program? Should we continue to get into aftermarket? And then, with the way the current environment, would the funding community continue to come alongside us to fund it? I'm asking a lot of questions. I don't know that my chin hit my chest, but pretty darn close to it. It certainly wasn't tilted upward, right? It certainly wasn't tilted upward. And then this morning I go into LinkedIn, and there is a student who writes her story about how they had entered a community college, met NABA, transferred to VSU. They just graduated with a degree in accounting with very little debt because of the scholarships that we were able to fund through the PTC and other ways. And then she tagged me and tagged the organization and said, thank you for believing in me and in my story. Let me tell you something. We're freaking scaling this thing, okay?
That's a real impact.
I don't know where the money is. I don't know who's going to pay for it, but people.
Great. That's amazing.
Because for me, those are when I say God speaks. Right? God speaks. And for me, I choose to believe that, it's one, and I operate in the belief that many receive, very few come back to say thank you. But when the one comes back, I believe that they speak on behalf of the many who didn't. And it doesn't matter. I don't need people's thank you because all I need is when I lay me down to sleep, he says, good job today. That's enough for me.
Good job. Perfect. You are often described as a provocateur. What does the term mean to you? And does meaningful change always require some form of disruption?
Always. You don't think I'm a provocateur? I mean, you just asked the question, I feel that requires like, I'm telling people about hard work and taking care of people and minding the shit. This is different. I think sometimes we form opinion of attributes we put on people based on what we've seen other people do. So we could think a provocateur is rude. We think that a provocateur is somebody who offends, right? Or something like that. That's not true. For me, the mere term of a provocateur is somebody who forces you to rethink what you thought you knew, or who offers you a set of data that forces you to stretch your imagination about what you thought was possible. Right? And so for me, change does not always require the whole house to fall apart. But if you want transformation, there's got to be disruption. There's just no transformation without disruption. Because actually, I think that comfort is the actual enemy of innovation.
Great. Talking about innovation, a lot of companies, a lot of CEOs, they're rushing to get to speed to all the innovation happening right now in the world. How do you balance innovation with ethical responsibility?
What a great question, Steve. Thank you for asking it. I'm writing extensively about AI and AI governance. And, I was recently interviewed by the Financial Times, and I'm pretty clear about it. I've become a study of governance, and I think companies who rush to apply disruptive technologies without the right framework are in for short-term gains, but long-term failure. That's my view, and I stand by it. So let me just tell you, I'm a good old capitalist. I'm not confused. I love the forces of the market. I'm not confused. You will never make a socialist out of me. I'm not confused. But I think where we lost our true north, and I've thought about this a lot, I think we lost our true north when this country decided to follow the freedman economic mindset of the sole purpose of businesses is to serve the interests of their shareholders. I think we lost. Now I know he's far more educated than I am, has degrees and economist and so on. I'm a John Adams capitalist. And I think that the minute we decided that the only thing as business leaders we must do is continue to push to get shareholder return, we've lost our true north. I think shareholder return is a derivative of a service that we deliver. Right? Perfect. That's my view. And I think that I get this firm to make more money, to get its right margin, to grow, because we're delivering a value for which people are willing to pay a certain cost.
Social responsibility.
Correct. Right? And so at that stand, I think, so if you are grounded in this, I think we go back to what I said earlier about my belief in people, my belief in humans, is I think that when we operate from sort of that baseline, technology, as it's always been disruptive as they may be, should enable us to serve better, broader, deeper, faster. But we have to have the right governance framework to make sure that we're building trust in the system, and that, we're communicating responsibly and transparently and in a way that is trustworthy, and that we're giving people time, markets time, stakeholder time to adjust. And so this idea, again, of we're implementing, we're going, that's just not a thought process that, we're going to get behind. NABA is going to be a leader in AI, period. In the, from our space from which we are, our employees are using it. I'm using it. we're getting better at, putting our time where we should. In fact, right before you all, I was being interviewed by a firm around my vision for the organization, around like, what is the technology we want to implement? And so how do I see the company transforming itself in the rise of, implementing some of the technologies that I want to implement? But we're never going to lose sight that machines and tools enable people, not the other way around. Machines don't have values. Machines don't have morality. Machines don't have judgment. And junk in and junk out. And so really understanding, what is the problem I'm trying to solve? What is the mission that I'm here to serve? Who are my stakeholders? How do I engage with them? How do we serve them better? And how do we use technology, AI, agentic AI, to actually deliver this? That's responsible. Anything else for me? I'm not here to tell people how to run their own companies, but I just think that's a little dangerous.
Definitely. Usually leaders like yourself who are pushing for systemic changes, they usually face difficulties. How do you think they should prepare for these kind of difficulties?
Courage, here's how we'll answer this question. Courage is not an absence of fear. Right? This is a quote. Courage is not an absence of fear. It is the choice to move ahead despite our greatest fear, because we believe fundamentally that he who is in me is greater than he who is in the world. Most difficulties come when you least expect it. And that's why always we realign along what are our values, what are our principles, what is the mission we seek to serve. And I resist the urge, Stephen Connolly, resist the urge to satisfy the short term. Because my grandmother, here she comes again, used to say to me, sometimes you lose a battle to win the war.
As a role model for the Black women and young Black women, what message would you share with young women that say that are in their early stage of their career, who has some doubt about the legitimacy, and they feel like they're in the room and they're having an imposter syndrome, and they don't feel like they belong the same way you at some point you feel you were challenged by your colleagues? What message could you give to this young generation of women professionals, female professionals today?
So the number one thing I tell them, do not make me a role model. Do not. I don't want to be put on a pedestal, because I'm human and I'm flawed, and I'm very likely to I make tons of mistakes every day. Some I know and I have a chance to rectify and apologize for. Some I don't even am aware that I'm doing them, right? So I just ask people to realize, don't put me on somebody's pedestal. That's one. The second piece is, I don't know that I give people cookie cutter advice, because something may have worked for me and it may not work for you. My mother used to say always, "Garde ça me fait, pas fait ça me fait." Because it may work for me and it may not work for you. I've never been a believer, one of the pieces in the 90s when Michael Jordan was like a superstar, and when people used to say, I want to be like Mike, I always found that to be offensive. I don't want to be like Mike. I don't want to be like anybody else. I want to be the best version of me.
Yeah.
I just want to be like anybody else. I'm a handful all by myself. Like, who wants to be like somebody else? That sounds so arrogant that you would say to somebody like, be like me. Like, what? I want to be like anybody and I want anybody to be like me. I tell people all the time, seriously, pull your hand and look at it, right? Your palm. I actually make people do this. And I say to them, realize that God made you and then broke the mold. Because never before in the history of the world, and never again in the history of humanity, there will be a handprint or a DNA exactly like yours, ever. That's how much he loves you and how much he thinks of you and how much he crafted you for a purpose for such a time as this. So who are you to try to emulate somebody else or want to be like somebody else? But here's the analogy that, we've brought to NABA Nation, and I think it's pretty quite clever if I can say that. This was a gift His Majesty gave to me. So there's this story. Adam Grant, in one of his books, wrote about the story of this researcher that is on a river in South Asia. And all of a sudden, all the trees around the river turn aglow with this light. And so he thought he was having an out-of-body experience, some supernatural something, etc., right? So he goes and asks questions and starts to study. And what he realizes, what he learns, is that the trees near the river are covered with fireflies. And he starts to study fireflies. And what he learns of fireflies is that they turn on their lights in synchronicity. It's fascinating. When one turns its light, it gives the other permission to turn their lights, and all of a sudden, in nanoseconds, they all turn their lights, and then it's that light that turned the trees into this like bright light and this glow that he thought was supernatural. And so I use that for people and say, remember, you are a firefly. But here's the other piece of it, gentlemen. Fireflies are bugs. I don't like bugs. They're ugly bugs. If you saw a firefly during the day, you'd be like, oh, like it's an ugly bug. No, you should go check it out. I'm telling you, I've studied fireflies now. But boy, none of us has ever seen a firefly in the middle of the night that we didn't hold our hand and say, like it just does something magical to us to see a firefly. And when we see a lux, they all show up at the same time, and for a brief moment, the hope, the sense of magic that they evoke in each of us never fails. What if we started to imagine ourselves as fireflies? That our bodies are just tents, vessels, but that we have incredible light inside each of us. I love how Brian Stevenson says, we are better than the worst thing we've ever done. And what if this at his image and resemblance was not our body, but that light of his that lived inside of us? And what if we lived our lives with the belief that it is each of our responsibility to allow our light to shine really brightly? Because when we do it, we give the others permission to shine their light too. What a magical world it would be. And for me, a more just world. What would I say to my younger self? I would say to her, I love you. It's only last year that I realized I never told myself I love you. And when I did, something happened to me. I don't know what it is. So I would tell my younger self, I wish I told myself I love you a lot younger.
Perfect. That's just amazing, very inspiring. We thank you for your time today. Thank you for all the amazing story, the amazing advice that you shared with us today. And if there's a principle, quote, or belief that guides your decision that you want to share with us, what would that be? I know that you already shared a lot already, but if there's one that keeps you at heart.
Wow. You are beautifully, carefully, and thoughtfully crafted. Live your life knowing that, and let your action reflect your essence.
We are very honored for this conversation today, and we really thank you for the work that you're doing. And if the audience wanna get in touch, learn more about the work that NABA is doing, what's the best way to do that?
Of course, check us out at www.nabainc.org. If you don't put the Inc, you're going to get to the National Association of Butterfly. That is not the right organization. And so make sure you put the Inc after the NABA and, check us out. We'd welcome all of you as members. We'd love to have our Haitian community around the work that we're doing. And Steve and Guylaine, thank you for the work that you are doing, for giving voice to the Haitian diaspora, for, allowing those stories to come forth. And I'm so honored to have had the opportunity to get to know you a little bit. And I hope you decide to stay engaged with us. And I'd love to get to know you better too.
We are very honored. Thank you so much for your presence with us today.
God bless both of you. Keep doing the work that you're doing. And if I can ever be of service, don't hesitate to reach out to me.
Thank you to the team. And it was a real pleasure, real honor.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank
everybody.
you. Take care of it.
You too. Bye.
Bye-bye. All right, that was a great conversation, and like we always say, currently there are conversations that you listen to, and there are conversations that definitely change the way that people think. And we want to thank Guylaine Saint Juste for the clarity.
It was amazing, and looking forward to get the comments, the reaction of the audience, and keep us engaged in this conversation, because I feel like we are talking about big topics and something that is interesting and important for
the depth and valuable insight that she shared with us today. And to everyone listening, if this episode made you reflect, if it shifted your perspective, don't keep it to yourself, share it with someone else. This was Edikasyon Se Richès. When we learn more, we can do more, we can change more. Thank you, and see you next week.
Edikasyon Se Richès, l'émission qui valorise notre culture et notre savoir. Vous aimez nos contenus? Alors, abonnez-vous à notre chaîne YouTube pour ne rien manquer. Abonnez-vous pour rester informé de toutes nos émissions inspirantes. Likez pour soutenir notre mission éducative. Partagez pour diffuser les vraies valeurs de notre pays. Ensemble, faisons briller l'éducation et la culture haïtienne.